A Reddit thread popped up the other day titled, "The CIA buried this story for 50 years. Now the sky is burning, the ice is drowning, and the prophecy feels too real." In 1859, the sun went into full meltdown mode. The resulting solar storm was so violent, it set telegraph offices on fire and painted the northern lights over Havana. Fast forward to today, and a Carrington-level solar storm wouldn't just fry a few wires. It would melt the internet's backbone, plunge entire continents into darkness, and cripple economies. NASA gives it a 12% chance of happening in the next decade. That might not be Vegas odds, but it's still enough to keep astrophysicists awake at night. And that's not all. The Earth is running a fever. CO2 levels are climbing 250 times faster than the natural rhythms that followed the last ice age. Ice sheets are hemorrhaging at a terrifying pace. Forests are burning in bizarre, cryptic patterns. Oceans are swelling like fists, ready to smash into everything we've built. The thermometers aren't lying. They're just tallying up the price for our collective arrogance. Here's where it gets interesting. Hidden in the CIA vaults for over 50 years until 2013 was a book called The Adam and Eve Story by John Thomas. Classified for half a century, this book warns that Earth is under a 6,500-year curse. According to Thomas, we're due for a pole shift that will flip entire continents in the blink of an eye. Tsunamis 2 miles high would wash away coasts, Greenland would melt in tropical heat, and Antarctica would drown cities. Biblical floods? Those weren't just acts of God, they were geomagnetic disasters. NASA dismissed it as nonsense, arguing that pole shifts take millennia, not days. But here's the question. Why hide it for 50 years if it's just a fairy tale? The truth? It doesn't really matter whether Thomas's apocalypse is fact or fiction. What matters is the pattern. We're fragile. One sun sneeze, 1 degree too many, one magnetic hiccup, and our grids, crops, and civilizations will crumble. We're building our societies like sand castles right on the edge of the tide, arguing about the weather while the sky smolders. So here's the real choice we face. Laugh at the CIA's dusty, buried doomsday scroll, or use it as a mirror. Time to reinforce the grids, swap oil for solar power, and teach future generations to read ice cores and satellite feeds like ancient runes. The Carrington event was the first warning shot. Climate change is a slow-motion autopsy of our own doing. Chan Thomas's story? It might just be a campfire tale, but it contains a kernel of truth. Civilizations fall when they ignore the signs written in fire and ice. The sun doesn't care about our politics. The atmosphere doesn't care about our negotiations. And as for the CIA's 50-year secret, maybe it's not so much a warning, but a reminder. Look up. The sky's always one flare away from rewriting history. Excerpt. With a rumble so low as to be inaudible, growing, throbbing, then fuming into a thundering roar, the earthquake starts. Only it's not like any earthquake in recorded history. In California, the mountains shake like ferns in a breeze. The mighty Pacific rears back and piles up into a mountain of water more than 2 miles high, then starts its race eastward. With the force of 1,000 armies, the wind attacks, ripping, shredding everything in its supersonic bombardment. The unbelievable mountain of Pacific seawater follows the wind eastward, burying Los Angeles and San Francisco as if they were but grains of sand. Across the continent, the 1,000-mile-per-hour wind wreaks its unholy vengeance, everywhere, mercilessly, unceasingly. Every living thing is ripped into shreds while being blown across the countryside, and the earthquake leaves no place untouched. In many places, the Earth's molten sublayer breaks through and spreads a sea of white-hot liquid fire to add to the Holocaust. Within 3 hours, the fantastic wall of water moves across the continent, burying the wind-ravaged land under 2 miles of seething water coast to coast. In a fraction of a day, all vestiges of civilization are gone, and the great cities, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Chicago, Dallas, New York, are nothing but legends. Barely a stone is left where millions walked just a few hours before. Now let's take a look at some of the comments. When you see the increased lithospheric dripping, the South Atlantic anomaly, the more auroras and the fact they think our core is changing shape, plus the poles continually moving, it is worrying. But as you said, we could be wiped out by literally anything at any moment. Life and experience are precious. Just enjoy the moment you are in with the people you love. A second commenter puts, "This has been my emotional, spiritual journey over the past year. When I first learned about the Adam and Eve book, I felt despair and terror. I'm in my early prime years, where all my hard work is starting to pay off, and I was pissed and scared that it would all have been for naught. My fiancé, who is not interested in this type of spooky stuff, he said he didn't want kids because what type of world would we be bringing them into? Every day it gets harder and harder to survive. Keep your spirits up and breathe. Gaia is screaming in pain, yet we just put AI into everything, which is going to speed run us to the end. It broke my heart to put the dream of motherhood away, but I get it and now I agree. These days, I'm very carpe diem about it all. I want to see how far I can get before this shit all crashes around us. I treasure every moment. I pray that I remain with my loved ones in the next realm and find them in my next life." Nuggets of Steel puts, "I fail to understand how a polar shift could flip continents and cause 2-mile-high tsunamis. Can you explain? It's not like it has actual mass or anything. The most I can find is potential for increased solar radiation, which would certainly be bad and lead to some of the electromagnetic overloads you're talking about. Edit. Finally had to go and look up Chan Thomas, and the misinformation in this post is fucking hilarious. Adam and Eve, the book, was never classified. It has always been available and has since gone out of print. A single copy of the book was classified by the CIA, not for the book's content, but because of the handwritten notes in the copy. The PDF released by the CIA simply had the handwritten notes removed. This is such a nothing burger. I am mad I got sucked in." Lastly, this intelligent commenter puts, "So by Thomas's description and dozens of other scientists' descriptions, what happens is the poles slowly shift from where we know them to be, then increase their speed. This has 100% happened. And like a rubber band breaking, they eventually reach a tipping point and snap into their new 90-degree position all at once. This breaks the current magnetosphere and all the protection it provides us. The obvious one is cosmic rays, but that's not going to be our concern in that moment. It's also electromagnetically connected to the sun and the other planets in the solar system. This is why planet alignments can be a good predictor of earthquakes, etc. We all think of the Earth as we've seen it in globes and maps all our lives, but that's not really its positioning. The Earth has a pretty solid tilt and wobbles as we circle our star. When the poles reach the snap point, the magnetosphere's lines of magnetism let go as the planet stops its rotation. But stopping that rotation only stops the continents, not the oceans. So with the inertia of the planet's previous rotation speed, the oceans now cascade over the land in miles-high tsunamis. Flood myths in all religions, I think all of you guys know that so. If you were smart, lucky enough to get to high ground and didn't drown, there's now a new electromagnetic connection being made with the sun as the magnetosphere reforms. This, theoretically, can direct CMEs at the Earth during this period, any one of which would be, let's say, a lot. It also, again theoretically, could trigger a micronova on the sun, which has happened. See black glass in the deserts of Africa as well as on the moon. I'm not sure about the validity of the micronova trigger here. I think it's more likely the result of dust accretion as the sun passes through a notoriously dusty area of the universe. So let's say you got from high ground to a cave that wasn't under 6 or 7 miles of ocean, and being in that cave prevented the radiation burns from CME outbursts from the sun, which would melt your insides in a few weeks at best. Cool. Now you have to deal with rapid climate change as the planet may or may not drop suddenly into an ice age. And even if it doesn't, the areas of the planet you knew to be tropical are now Arctic and vice versa. So almost everywhere is catastrophically different than it just was. We know this has happened, more or less. There's a petrified forest under Antarctica, and we're certain Egypt was filled with vegetation at one point. There are so many more examples of this. The magnetic anomaly, as termed by NASA, off South America's eastern coast is where the southern pole is headed. The magnetosphere is already giving way and it's caused a hole to open up. It boggles me that people in, say, New Jersey will post photos of auroral lights over their house and not question why they're seeing them. This is why. As the field weakens, the northern lights get less northern. If you didn't know about this already, I apologize. It's something you can't unhear, and there's not much to do about it. Also, I'm not an expert, so this is just my understanding. Also, I have read Chan Thomas's book a few times, super short, and loads of other related books like The Weatherman's Guide to the Sun, but again, I'm not an expert. Edit. There is something else in this process where the core of the Earth is molten, but solid ATM because of its electric connection to the sun. And much like how Mercury, the metal, is a liquid but solid, when electrified, the lack of electricity allows the tectonic plates to just glide, I guess. This part I'm not as familiar with. So what do you think? Is this real or just a hoax? Leave a comment and let us know. Thanks for listening, and if you want to watch more content and amazing videos like this, please like, comment, and subscribe. See you next time on my YouTube channel.